We're going to explain how to load and check the VOR24 into Nantucket. This is the very first approach that we use here at Aviator.NYC when you're working on your 20 hours towards your instrument rating. These videos are meant to be paused, rewind, and watched in 4K. If you are falling behind and you cannot keep up with the video, that's a good sign that you need a coach. We do offer remote instruction as well as in-person instruction here in New York City. At the moment, we're located about 7 miles from the Nantucket VOR. We have a flight plan where it's pretty simple. We took off out of Farmingdale, the VOR, Nantucket VOR, and then Nantucket Airport. There are two different ways to fly an approach. We're going to cover the most basic approach that we can do for purposes of this video. So what we're planning on doing is we're going to fly to the station. Then we're going to fly outbound on the 060 radial, do the procedure turn, and then fly inbound on the 240 course. I will clear this. Once we're inbound, we are going to reach the VOR at 800 feet and then continue our descent down to 440. So now, with any approach, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check the NOTAMs. These are the active NOTAMs for today. You have to make sure that every approach, before every flight, you check the NOTAMs, period. In this case, is the high intensity lighting system, which is not going to affect our approach. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check the ATIS of 1275. We'll make sure we get the ATIS. In this case, we're going to say it's information alpha, 1 mile visibility, 500 foot ceilings. As information alpha. Once we get the ATIS, I will set the 121.5, which is the emergency frequency. Now, the first thing with any approach, we're going to load it. So because we already have Nantucket Airport, I'm going to select procedure. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can move the camera a bit so you guys can also see the knobs that I'm pressing. Now that I repositioned the camera, let's go. I'm going to select procedure, select approach. We already have Nantucket. This is very crucial that on the top left, let me move my pointer here, we can check that this is the correct airport. This will change if we're doing a diversion or anything else, or if we don't have, let me go back, if we don't have a flight plan, that's not gonna populate, it's only gonna populate whatever airport is located up here. So in this case, we have Nantucket, procedure, select approach, and that's the airport is populating at the airport mark. Then with the big knobs, with the FMS big knobs, we're going to select VOR24. And as this is a complete, you gotta watch our other videos with different approaches. But for our today's purposes, and when we started on doing this approach, we always gonna select Nantucket VOR because it's gonna give us the full approach. So we're gonna select Nantucket VOR, minimums, going back to the iPad. And I will highlight it. We're looking for 440 is our minimums. Minimums, I'm gonna use the FMS small knobs and we're gonna select barrel. Then we're going to set 440. And now, if it gives us the option to activate or load, I prefer to load the approach. I'm gonna select enter and enter. Remember, at this point, our ATC instructions are expect the VOR24. That's all we got. We're still on our flight plan. That's also the primary reason why we loaded the approach. Once we're in here, we start going, let me do that again. I'm gonna push the FMS knobs and using the big FMS knobs, I'm gonna rotate all the way right so we can see the whole approach. So the first thing we're gonna see is that Nantucket VOR is the initial approach fix because that is the first waypoint we're gonna fly to, okay? Or at least we're expecting to fly to. Then we're expecting to cross 2000. I'll get my pointer here so you guys can see. There we go. So 2000, this 2000 is getting populated based on the altitude alerter here. The procedure turn is going to be flown on the 060 outbound, okay? Notice that it doesn't specify what headings or what is it going to do, but we can see the display. It is actually what we need to be flying. Then we're expected to cross inside the procedure turn. We can descend down to 1,800, which is the lowest altitude for the procedure turn. Then once we're done with the procedure turn, we're gonna fly the 240 course to the Nantucket VOR, which is the final approach fix, and we are going to cross the Nantucket VOR at 800 feet. We're gonna continue from 800 down to 440, and that gets transferred here to the PFD. And we have 440 set. The missed approach point is runway 24. The camera angle here, because this is very important to note. The missed approach, I personally have seen it in the database and I have seen it in the airplane being off. I also have seen the holds being off. One thing that commonly happens is the NOTAMs will have a different missed approach instructions. And if you're flying the flight management system, the database on the FMS, you're gonna be flying the wrong missed approach. And that happens more often than you think. This is the reason why we have to load it, but then we got to check it, and that's the step we're in. We're checking the database because there is wrong items on the database. Does it happen often? No, not often, but it does happen. It happens more than you would actually think it happens. So it's very important that we're checking all this database, and I personally have seen multiple times the missed approach being off. Now, that is in the simulator and the airplane. Our simulator stays with the airplane database, so if there is an issue on the database, more than likely that issue is going to happen also in the airplane. So now that we have Nantucket, missed approach, runway 24, then we're going to climb to 700. This box is what we're looking for in the iPad. 700 feet, and instead of pointing, I'm just going to use my pointer again. 700 feet, we're going to fly on runway, on heading 240, and then we're going to intercept heading 310. We're climbing to 2,500. This is where we are. Let me clear this. This is where we are. And we're going to fly to Clammy intersection on the 270 radio, which is what we're looking at here. We're gonna hold that Clammy on the 090 radio, or actually in the 090 course, which is here. The database on the G1000 does not show the type of entry. It's only going to populate it. Let me move my pointer. It's going to populate it up here, what tells you once you're ready to enter the hold, what kind of entries it's planning on doing. In this case, more than likely it's going to be doing a teardrop entry. The reason for this video is to explain how to load and check the database on the Garmin G1000. It is not meant to explain how to fly the approach. If while you're watching this video you fall behind, just try to rewind it. And if you're still having a hard time, I recommend that you check the links below on the video description, because you can book a lesson in person or book a remote lesson